Welcome to the public meeting of the New York City Rent Guidelines Board. This is one of a series of meetings that we have had and will be having to determine the renewal lease adjustments for rent-stabilized housing units in New York City, with leases commencing on or being renewed on or after October 1st, 2014, and on or before September 30th, 2015. My name is Rachel Godsell. I'm the chair. Welcome to those of you who are in the audience. I will now take roll call of the board. Please respond if present. Magda Cruz. Present. Harvey Epstein.
Present.
Stephen Flax.
Present.
Shayla Garcia.
Present.
Cecilia Hossa.
Present.
Carol Shine.
Present.
David Wink, not present. Sarah Williams-Willard.
Present.
And needless to say, I am present. The next meeting of this board will be our first public hearing. There will be 4 public hearings in all. These are opportunities for the public to comment on the proposed guidelines that were decided on the vote on our most recent meeting, which was May 5th. Thank you. Everyone in the room knows. They will be held in the following dates, times, and locations. Thursday, June 12th, 2014, will be in the Bronx at the Repertory Theater of Hostos Community College, 450 Grand Concourse, and that meeting will be from 5 o'clock until 8 p.m. Monday, June 16th, will be at the Emigrant Savings Bank Building, 4951 Chambers Street, between 2 and 6 p.m. The third meeting will be Wednesday, June 18th, 2014, at Brooklyn Borough Hall, 209 Joralemon Street, also from 5 to 8 p.m. And the final public meeting will be Thursday, June 19th, 2014, at Queensborough Hall, 12055 Queens Boulevard, 5 to 8 p.m. Directions to those hearings are available on our website, nycrgb.org, in the About Us section meeting schedule. And you can sign up by calling the Rent Guideline Board office, 212-385-2934. And of course, all of this, which I'm basically reading aloud to you, is available in hard copy as well. The final vote will take place June 23rd, starting at 6 p.m. That meeting will be held in the Great Hall at Cooper Union, 7 East 7th Street at the corner of 3rd Avenue in Manhattan. So again, final vote is June 23rd at 6 p.m. For board members, in your folder, you'll find copies of the 2014 Housing Supply Report, as well as the changes to rent-stabilized housing stock in New York City in 2013, both of which will be presented to us this morning. Copies of the reports are here today, and for those of you in the audience, they will also be posted on our website after the meeting. After the presentation by staff of the RGB reports, DHCR Deputy Commissioner Woody Pascal and members of his staff will be appearing at today's meeting. In our folder, there's data from DHCR in response to our questions that were submitted prior to today's testimony. We've also received a response to board member questions from Deputy Commissioner Richard White from HCR's Tenant Protection Unit. This letter is also in our folder. All submissions received through May 28th from owners, tenants, and public officials regarding this year's guidelines are also in our folder. In addition to DHCR, we will also have a presentation from the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, Assistant Commissioner John Kimball, regarding the mayor's new affordable housing plan, Housing New York, a 5-borough 10-year plan. A copy of the executive summary of this plan is in our folder, and so that will be an opportunity for us to hear from and ask questions about the mayor's plan. So welcome everyone, and let us begin.
Can I ask 2 quick questions?
Sure.
Just one question. When people sign up for public testimony, what information are we collecting? Are we collecting their name and phone number and email, or what are we collecting?
Just their name, and if they have an affiliation, like with a tenant group or whatever. So.
Just in future, if we could collect their email, then we would create email lists of people that we could then provide ongoing information to. If people testify, we could then send them updates. It might be an easy way to collect data, so in the future, if we need lists, we've maintained lists of people who have testified in the past.
Take it into consideration.
The other thing is, just a quick question, is I know we have to, 3 days before our vote on the 23rd, we need to meet to have at least 1 or 2 preliminary proposed?
We actually don't have a meeting scheduled. Any meeting would have to be noticed, and time would have to be provided, et cetera. So any proposals would have to be submitted by email to the board.
So I know you mentioned that, or Andrew mentioned that because of public meeting laws, we have to have a proposed votes 3 days before our final vote.
Right.
So are we then doing this at the public hearing in Queens, or when are we having that conversation?
There's not a meeting scheduled to have a conversation about what the proposed votes would be. This is, again, the first year in which this law is in implementation. There are a couple of different ways that we can handle it. One would be simply anyone who has a proposed, a proposal to be voted upon would email that to Andrew by, before June 20th, so he could then have that as part of the, he could then make that public as is required by the local law.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, but there'll be a boilerplate language that we'll send to board members. I hope to have that to everyone before the first hearing, but when you decide whatever proposal that you would like to do, you would just sort of where the language calls for whatever increase or rollback or whatever, that's where you would put the language. So the rest of it is sort of boilerplate stuff.
This is the language you've all heard. It was the language that was read aloud at the preliminary vote. And so, again, because this is new, this is all a little bit in flux, but the way it seems logical for it to work is everyone will receive that language that you've heard before, seen before, but you'll have a copy of it in your email box. And if anyone has a proposal they'd like to submit, they can submit that, and it will be then circulated to the full board for each person to review before the 23rd.
So I'm clear, there's going to be no opportunity to discuss any of our proposals before the 23rd. Is that what you're saying?
There is not an opportunity in the schedule as it is currently constructed to discuss our proposals as a full group in a public meeting now.
Maybe I'm the only one who thinks this is a little odd, but if we're going to have information that's out there, it does make sense to try to talk about it before we have that final vote. Is that at all possible, or is that?
I mean, again, I certainly understand the point. What's difficult is, and this is obviously not a fault of anyone present, in light of the tightness of the schedule with the public meetings, I'm not sure exactly when that would be. So the last public meeting is June 19th. We could certainly have a discussion at the the Queensborough Hall meeting. So that's June 19th. The vote meeting is June 23rd. So as you can see, it's not as though we're sort of being dilatory. It's that in order to have all of the public hearings and then the vote on the 23rd, there isn't really an opportunity to have a separate meeting in addition to the 23rd to actually have a discussion. It's certainly, I think it would be a fine idea if it is certainly possible to have a discussion at the public hearing on June 19th. It is likely, if prior history is any guide, that there will not be a huge turnout at the Queen's meeting, at the Queen's public hearing, and so there may well be time to have some sort of discussion if people would like to, and you'll have had that language for a long time, so if people would like to have presentations that we can share, and again, that would be in public, we can certainly do that. But as you can see, the schedule is tight.
I have a problem with that plan.
Because you may not be able to be there on the 19th?
Not only that, Sarah and I just discussed that neither of us may be able to make the Queen's meeting. So, I don't know how that affects the quorum situation. That's also been unprecedented where the owner representatives are unable to attend one of the public meetings. There's never been a situation where we had so many. So I don't know.
I mean, for purposes of the quorum, the bylaws don't require any particular, we do meet a quorum. I understand, Magna, certainly your concern, if that would be a day that there was intended to be a discussion. Another option, obviously, would be, knowing that neither of you can be present, if people would like to have some sort of group discussion about whatever their proposal is, have that ready on the June 18th, and we can have that in the Brooklyn meeting if people are present for that meeting.
Yeah, the 19th I have a conflict, but the 18th I'm absolutely. I have no issue with any of the other dates other than the 19th. So if we decide we want to do it in Brooklyn, that's fine with me too.
Actually, Sunday doesn't count in this count of days. That's what the law says, so I think I have to post by the 19th.
Okay, so then if
the
anyone.
18th may work better then.
So if any member would like to propose a set of numbers that they would like to have discussion of the full board, then it sounds as though that should happen before the 18th, and we can have some time, again, I'm not sure, we obviously can't control how many people, or we can't necessarily anticipate how many people will be attending the Brooklyn meeting for public testimony. So it's, that's sort of, again, unclear. I don't know what the history's been in Brooklyn. And I don't know if this year is going to be different than prior years in light of all of the different factors going into this year. And again, obviously, I understand that this is a complicated schedule, a complicated year in light of the implementation of the local law, but there's not a lot that can be done at this stage.
Can that discussion be on the front end, or does the public hearing part have to occur first?
I mean, if members of the public are here, I think it's incumbent upon us to have them testify when they arrive.
Well, but if we still have that same sort of situation where it takes a while to get people through security, like we were all present very early, and we were there 45 minutes before we were actually able to start the meeting, could it?
We can't, legally speaking, we can't have any kind of group discussion that isn't an official part of the public meeting, and that, so it can, and no discussion can occur prior to 5 o'clock.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm not saying it would be anytime before 5 o'clock, but I'm just saying that our last meeting was supposed to start at, I'm not even sure what time, but we didn't actually end up starting. So it was issued at, say, 6 o'clock, and it didn't actually start till 7. Does that, by the fact that it was posted and dated that, and there was members of the public present, could that mean that while people are getting through security, we can get started at the time? So instead of it starting
I mean, again, obviously, we hope not to have the kind of security issues that we had at the last meeting. So I think it will certainly, it may well be that 5 o'clock is early enough that there will only be a small number of people present. I would say, as a matter of respect to them, if there are people present who wish to testify, they should be able to do so right when they arrive, because they might have childcare issues or other things on the table. So I think it's appropriate for us to hear them. It may well be that there will be some small number of people present right at 5 o'clock. They can testify, then there'll be a gap, in which case it's certainly fine with me that we start the discussion.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a comment about the Bronx. I haven't been to the other places, but I know in Hostos, in order for you to come in, you have to show ID. I was wondering if that requirement for that building, specifically Building C, is going to be somehow waived. I feel like having IDs be a part of people coming into a building will make it very likely that many people might not be able to go into buildings because they don't have issued IDs.
I'll double check, but we've never had that issue before with our hearing. I think when you're doing something in the theater, if whatever it is, when the public arrives, they don't have to do ID, but other parts of the campus, that may be the case, but I'll definitely double check.
Please, because I've been there on other stuff and they always make me show ID.
Okay, and we've
It's never happened.
we've been there 3 times and we never had that issue, but I'll see if they change the reg, but we'll get them in.
So let me just for clarification purposes, on the 18th, you are going to have discussion on the proposals that will be due by the 19th? Is that what I understand? And I'm not opposed to having a discussion, I just want to understand.
Again, right, what Harvey has proposed is that there be an opportunity for some sort of board discussion of proposals. It would not be, it's not as though one would be required necessarily to have your proposal to Andrew and to be disseminated to the board by the 18th. If anyone would like to have discussion of their proposal at that Wednesday, June 18th meeting, then obviously submit it to Andrew so he can share it with all of us before that meeting. But again, it's not required. Is that fair?
But I think it's Andrew saying that we have to have it on the 18th because the 19th you need to file it, right?
I need to post, the way it works is I need to distribute to the board members and post it on our website, which is very simple. It's easy to do. So all I need from you is the document on the 19th. So by 11:59 on that day, I have to post it. It has to be 3 days. So that's Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
It almost makes the Queen's public hearing superfluous if we have all the proposals in prior to the hearing.
Again, this is
To
not
hear the
ideal, and we all know that. But I think that it is likely that there will be more than one proposal. And so I don't think I don't think that it is superfluous to have the Queen's meeting. We have the Queen's meeting scheduled. We obviously want to hear from folks from Queens. Sort of,
But will the proposals have to have been given to Andrew?
By the end of the day on the 19th, yes.
So by 5 PM, so before the hearing?
Yes. because I'll have to.
But again, I don't think that
I
it
mean,
is,
if you can get it to, I mean, if you know what you want to do, please send it to me, as soon as I send the boilerplate language out, which, again, I'll shoot for the end of next week, send it to me. I won't post it until we're ready to post it, but, I don't think it's something you have to wait till the 18th.
but Magna,
If you know what you want to do, and then if that proposal, we can even have copies of that at the June 19th meeting if you guys want to see the actual proposals that board members have put forward,
But in-
and they'll have it there. That's circulating as well. I actually technically have to do it by email, but I could circulate it.
I
as
don't
public
think that
hearings.
renders the Queen's public hearing superfluous, because there will be a range of proposals, I'm confident. And so there will still be an opportunity to take into account whatever one hears in Queens in deciding what you think your vote will be. And just because someone presented a proposal doesn't obviously mean that's the only proposal that they can ultimately vote upon. Magna, I obviously hear you, and I hear the concerns about the truncated nature in which this is occurring. Sort of, it will not happen this way next year, needless to say, but we're in the position that we're in, and we're doing the best we can.
I'm sorry, can I ask just one last question? I'm sorry. So if we have like 6 proposals and something wants, and we talk about it, we submit them, but people agree to tweak some of those proposals. It can't be in between those proposals.
Right. You can't, according to the
So it
rules.
has to
According
be,
the rules. And then we'd have, I mean, we can, we
But
just
we'd
have to meet again.
again.
That's, I mean, it's not
Right.
like,
I mean,
So
Okay.
that's what I'm confused about,
If-
that
if
now
it's
we're going to
tweaked, if
hear
it's
more
not-
people coming and speaking, but we can't really change our proposal.
well, again, because
No,
I'm
I
in-
understand the constraints, I'm not,
No,
but
no.
I'm just saying that, from a process point of view, it's.
I guess my reasoning here is, and if we can, in 1 second, end this conversation and hold it until the end of the meeting, because we do have people present to testify, and I think all of this can actually wait. So why don't we now hear what we're going to hear from the staff and from the folks from DHCR and HPD, and we can continue the discussion after the presentations.
Thank you. Good morning. The rent stabilization law requires the Rent Guidelines Board to consider the overall supply of housing accommodations and overall vacancy rates. Therefore, our research staff produces an annual housing supply report which highlights year-to-year changes and trends in the supply of residential housing in New York City, with a focus on findings from the 2011 Housing and Vacancy Survey, new construction and demolition data, conversions and subdivisions, cooperative and condominium activity, housing rehabilitation, and government housing programs and funding. The major findings of this year's housing supply report are 17,995 building permits were issued in 2013 for dwelling units, an increase of 74.1%. The number of new housing units completed in 2013 rose to 12,682, a 34.1% increase over the prior year. City-sponsored residential construction will add 15,382 new housing units to the residential stock, 70% of which are rehabilitation projects. Demolitions increased 14.6% to 1,286 in 2013. And there was a 15.2% increase in the number of units in co-op or condo plans approved in 2013 to 5,245 units, while the number of approved plans grew by 18.8%. The number of units constructed with 421A certificates decreased by 27.3% to 7,890, but the number of units newly receiving J51 abatements or exemptions increased by 21.3% to 55,659. In addition, 11.5% of all rental housing is considered overcrowded, and the citywide vacancy rate was 3.12% in 2011. Findings from the 2011 Housing and Vacancy Survey, the triennial survey of the city's housing stock, were released to the public in 2012. We presented HVS findings in our earlier income and affordability study, and we report on data related to the city's housing stock for this presentation. New York City is unique in that a significant share of its housing is renter-occupied. The HVS reports approximately 2/3 of the city's housing stock is renter-occupied, almost double the nationwide average. New York City has more than 2.1 million rental units, and slightly less than half of those are rent stabilized. Citywide, the New York City vacancy rate in 2011 was 3.12%. Vacancy rates also vary by rent regulation status. The HVS found the tightest market among pre-war stabilized units with a vacancy rate of 2.54% in 2011. Post-war stabilized units also maintained a low vacancy rate at 2.91%, while private, non-regulated units were vacant at a 4.43% rate. The HVS reports that overcrowding varies by rent regulation status, with the highest rates among the stabilized stock. Overall, 11.5% of all rental housing in New York City is overcrowded. That is, there is more than one person per room on average. And 4.3% is severely overcrowded. That is, there is an average of over 1.5 persons per room. Pre-war stabilized housing is most crowded, with 14.7% overcrowded and 5.9% severely overcrowded, while post-war units are overcrowded at a rate of 11.5%, and severe overcrowding is at a 4.8% rate. Private, non-regulated housing is slightly less overcrowded at 10.9%, with 3.8% severely overcrowded. As this pie chart illustrates, about 2/3 of New York City's occupied housing stock is renter-occupied. The largest share is private, non-regulated rentals, 39%, followed by pre-war stabilized, 34%, other regulated units at 14%, post-war stabilized, 11%, and rent-controlled units, 2%. Examining the number of building permits issued annually helps to determine the amount of new housing planned each year. Permit approvals for new dwelling units in 2013 increased by 74.1% to 17,995, the fourth consecutive year of increase, but still 16,000 units less than 2008 levels. Permits rose in all of the boroughs, including Queens, which rose by the most proportionally, up 121.4% to 3,161 units. Manhattan also saw a significant increase in permits, up 108.6% to 4,856 units, while permits issued in Brooklyn almost doubled, rising 83.1% to 6,140 permits. And permits in Staten Island rose by 78.3% to 1,200 units. Permits rose by the lowest proportion in the Bronx, which last year saw the greatest proportional increase in permits. In 2013, permits rose 3.4% to 2,638. First quarter 2014 permits increased by 99.6% in comparison to the number of permits issued during the first quarter of 2013, including levels which more than doubled in Manhattan and Queens, rising 218.5% and 149.3% respectively. First quarter permits also rose by double digits in the Bronx and Brooklyn, rising 77.1% and 45.7% respectively. And permits decreased in Staten Island, down 25.3%.
Excuse me, can I just ask a quick question? This is for all housing, not necessarily regulated, or this is all
Yes,
housing?
all
Period.
housing. As this pie chart illustrates, you can see from this graph that residential building permits increased 74.1%, but are still at levels below most of the 2000s. While the city overall had a 74.1% increase in permits to 17,995 citywide, this map shows the number of permits by borough in 2013 and the change from 2012. As already noted, permits rose by double and triple digits in every borough but the Bronx. Permit data can also be analyzed more deeply by looking at the reported size of the buildings applying for permits. In 2013, a total of 1,383 buildings received permits, containing a total of 17,995 housing units. Citywide, 29.1% of these buildings were single-family, 32.0% were two-family, 13.3% were 3 or 4 family structures, and 25.7% were buildings with 5 or more units. As this chart illustrates, almost all building permits in Manhattan were for the largest buildings, while in Staten Island, virtually all permits were for either 1 or 2 family buildings. Building size was more evenly distributed in the other boroughs. Another way of measuring the level of housing creation is to look at the number of housing units actually completed in a given year, which in 2013 increased. In 2013, there were 12,682 new housing completions citywide, a 34.1% increase over the prior year, and the first increase in 4 years. Increases were seen in 3 of the 5 boroughs, including Manhattan, which rose by 169.7%, Queens, which rose by 46.4%, and Brooklyn, which rose by 9.3%. But completions fell in the Bronx, down 10.0%, and Staten Island, down 24.7%. New housing is also created by various programs sponsored by the city's Department of Housing Preservation and Development and the Housing Development Corporation, through programs like Cornerstone, the Neighborhood Redevelopment Program, and the Low-Income Affordable Marketplace Program. These agencies reported 15,382 housing starts in fiscal year 2013, 70% of which were rehabilitations. This is a decrease of 9.7% over the prior fiscal year. The 421A program is designed to encourage new construction of multifamily housing. Owners are exempt from paying additional real estate taxes on the increased value of the property due to the new construction. Exemptions last for 10 to 25 years, and rental properties must abide by all rent regulations during benefits. Participation has been rather variable in recent years, with both significant increases and decreases. But for the second consecutive year, the number of new 421A exemptions fell, decreasing 27.3%. A total of 7,890 units newly received 421A benefits in 2013, with 37.0% of those units in Brooklyn and 31.6% in Manhattan. While 19.2% of units were in Queens, the Bronx contained 10.1% of the units newly receiving 421A benefits, and with only 161 units, Staten Island contained 2.0% of units newly receiving 421A benefits in 2013. Newly certified 421A units went down in every borough but Staten Island during 2013, including drops of more than 40% in both Manhattan and the Bronx. With the jump from 1 building to 6, units in Staten Island were the only ones to see an increase at the borough level. As you can see in this graph, the number of apartment units newly receiving 421A benefits in 2013 decreased for the second consecutive year, but rates are still higher than many other recent years. To meet demand in the housing market, office buildings and manufacturing space are sometimes converted into residential housing, or a residential building is subdivided into additional units. A number of SRO building owners have filed to convert their buildings to other uses, such as tourist hotels. In 2013, 129 of these applications were accepted, up 6 applications from the 123 filed during the prior year. More than 40% of New York City's owner-occupied housing is in the form of co-ops and condos. Construction of new co-ops and condos, which increase the supply of owner-occupied housing, and the conversion of rental housing to co-op or condo status, which reduces the supply of rental housing, have to be accepted by the Attorney General's office. The number of co-op and condo plans filed in 2013 with the Attorney General increased 18.8%, with a total of 190 plans containing 5,245 units, a 15.2% increase in units. This is the second consecutive year of increase in accepted co-op and condo units. Similar to recent years, a majority of the 2013 plans were for new construction, a total of 3,753 new units in 151 plans. And 843 units in 18 plans were for non-eviction conversions, with the remaining 649 units in rehabilitation plans. The majority of plans accepted were located in Brooklyn, with 49% of the share of accepted co-op and condo plans. And the majority of units within these plans were located in Manhattan, with 66% of the share of units citywide. As this graph shows, the number of accepted units in co-op and condo plans increased for the second consecutive year. The purple bar represents the portion of accepted units that are condos, and the pink bars are accepted co-op units. In 2013, almost all accepted units were condos. Another tax abatement and exemption program available to owners has been the J51 program. J51 was designed to encourage the rehabilitation of residential units. As with the 421A program, J51 benefits are available to both rental as well as owner-occupied units. Eligible activities include MCIs, moderate or substantial rehabilitation, and conversion from non-residential use if substantial government assistance is provided. 55,659 units were newly approved for J51 benefits in 2013, a 21.3% increase from the prior year. While citywide, the number of newly approved J51 units rose, at the borough level, the only increases were seen in the Bronx, which rose 128.9%, and in Staten Island, which rose from 0 units to 180. In Brooklyn, the number of newly approved units fell 45.4% and fell by 16.3% in Manhattan and 0.6% in Queens. This chart shows the fluctuation in the number of housing units newly receiving J51 benefits since 1991. As you can see, levels increased 21% in 2013. Another part of the city's housing stock are those buildings that the city has taken title to in the past for non-payment of taxes. The city in recent years has developed new policies to deal with the non-payment of taxes, including anti-abandonment and third-party transfer programs. In the meantime, it continues to divest itself of the buildings it already owns, and since 1994 has reduced the number of vacant and occupied in-rem housing by at least 98.2%. Leaving a total of just 775 units managed by the city by the end of fiscal year 2013, down from a peak of almost 100,000 units in 1986. This is a decrease of 10% over the prior fiscal year. So in conclusion, the number of building permits increased by 74.1%, but are still 16,000 units below 2008 levels, while housing units completed increased by 34.1% to 12,682 units. The in-rem housing stock decreased, and 15.2% more units were approved for co-ops and condos, but 27.3% less units were built with 421A tax incentives, while 21.3% more units were rehabilitated with J51 tax incentives. Demolitions also increased, rising by 14.6%, and the vacancy rate was 3.12%, less than the 5% legal threshold required for the continuation of rent stabilization. Thank you. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Danielle. Any questions?
The in-rem housing, the unit here is the apartment or it's the building?
That's the number of units.
So number of apartments?
Yes.
Okay. So that could be 15 buildings?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions? Thanks so much, Danielle.